We talk to team managers to get the inside info.
As a team manager, you basically just want everyone to have the best time they possibly can, whether it's win, whether it's enjoyment, or even helping people with their mindset.
Find out what they look for in a team driver.
It's kind of nice to see these guys grow and now become idols and mentors to other junior drivers, but ambassadors for the brand as well.
Do they actually use team orders?
That is for the greater good of the team, and I think that's actually at times a healthy implementation of a team order.
And their toughest jobs as team managers.
I don't want to say names because he might watch this and go, hey man, I do appreciate that.
Keep watching to get the details.
We're talking to people whose job it is to get the best out of a team of drivers at an event. What's that like?
It's tough. Sometimes you're, let's call it, blessed with drivers that are very self-sufficient, so they can set their own cars up, they can drive really smoothly, and they make racing easy. And then you have some racers that are good at driving, struggle with the cars, and then you kind of work your way through to the guys that are a bit more tricky. So it's not always easy, but after years of doing it, you kind of work out how to manage those people and their needs, really.
So for me, I think it's probably one of the most rewarding parts about RC racing. As a now non-racer myself, I find it definitely the most enjoyable part of it. I enjoy the technical side of things, the manufacturing side of things, sure, but seeing all of the guys hopefully improve and do a little bit better is, that makes it worth it.
I've been kind of developing the team for many, many years through the junior program that we do, and building up a good number of junior drivers basically. So it's taken some time to get there, but I think we are, well positioned now for the future moving forward. We've got kind of like the generation of juniors that we have now, and then second tier juniors behind them as well. So the future does look bright for us.
Yeah, it's going well. First couple of weeks in the role, shall we say. Just learning everyone, especially it's a new team anyway, so it's learning everyone, how they want the cars to be, try and give them a bit of help and support. That's what people want. They want you to be there for when stuff goes wrong or right. So, hopefully be able to influence their races in a good way.
What about like just getting them to the track on time or getting them out to their heats on time and stuff like that? Is there that sort of thing to contend with?
Some drivers, some high-level drivers, are sometimes they're going up to the rostrum when they should have been up there like a minute ago, like, dude, like, why are you so late? Or they're late to marshal, and that looks bad on you and people comment to you about it. Sometimes it might feel a bit petty because it might be, for example, someone from a different team. But sometimes it's me moaning at them like, come on, mate, that doesn't look good. But a lot of the things I also do is a lot of coaching. You're a bit fast here, a bit fast there. A lot of time people are just too quick. They have too much bottom end power and they go launching past the next apex as they've come out of a previous one. And it's just like, right, let's turn all your boost off. So you come out the corner, it's smooth. Oh, and they're like, oh yeah, I've improved. And I say, yeah. Racers always feel they need to push harder. It's natural.
As an experienced racer, and you've raced all over the world in multiple classes, does that give you an advantage?
Yeah, I think so. Just experience, like you say, it's knowing what they're going through, knowing what people want from the car when they ask for certain things. All that experience just lends into making their experience of the race better. As a team manager, you basically just want everyone to have the best time they possibly can, whether it's win, whether it's enjoyment, or even helping people with their mindset. So, yeah, hopefully I can add, good value there because I've been there and done it all.
I think, it gives you an insight into what to look for. For us, I think roots and heritage with Reedy and Associated was always kind of this kind of family vibe, and, sons and dads being grounded and kind of, bringing in the next generation of talent, and knowing that they've got good kind of roots with family behind them. So, you don't get the hot heads and, the craziness that you get with some people. So for me, it first started by me starting to wind down with my racing in the competitive arena, should we say, picking up somebody like Neal. So that was one of my prize pickings in the days gone by. having somebody that's loyal to the brand, so a lifer. Neal obviously has done that as well as I've done that with the brand as well. So, and then off the back of that, having Neal kind of work with some of the juniors that we've kept our eyes on, like, use the halls, or prior to that, we did have Daniel Kobovic, obviously Una at the time. Daniel's moved on to obviously other brands, but Una stayed with us, so he's been a loyal ambassador. Feels like a senior statesman now, yet he's only 22. So he's been with us 10, 12 years now, and he's one of the senior members of the team. So it's kind of nice to see these guys grow and now become idols and mentors to other junior drivers, but ambassadors for the brand as well. So yeah, it's fun. I've really enjoyed the journey.
When you're at an event and you've got your crew, Nemo, Gamma guys, and they're all around, I guess they all have different needs, they all have different strengths. How do you balance that? Some of them are more technically independent, maybe?
Yeah. So there are some that it's also kind of what they're at that race to achieve. If it's some of the younger guys, some of our junior team, it's more, sort of, they have their own goals that they set out. They don't necessarily communicate that with you because they don't really want you to know who they're trying to be on track, probably another junior. But often with the younger drivers, it's like a real specific target. And then for the older drivers who are there just kind of more enjoying themselves, it's still important to talk sort of strategy with them, but at a much easier level, just a much smoother level, not so deep into it, because they're there to have a good time, they want to have fun, they want to keep it on its wheels and have a good experience. But it doesn't need to be that technical. They just want to know, just kind of tidy this line up, or, you see it there, be careful on this section. That's kind of the extent of it. And that then is, sort of what they appreciate when they're there to have a good time.
Of course, it varies. The personalities differ and stuff, but we've got a good, level-headed group of guys. They can work independently. Some are a little bit more high maintenance. Usually, some of the younger ones. But I think we've got like a really good working party that kind of all chip in, all bring something to the table, all give their own views and perspectives, all kind of have a reflective driver in the style that they have. Neal with his kind of like point and squirt style, or somebody else that carries a little bit more corner speed. So they migrate to each other, but they're good at sharing information. They cheer each other on. So there's not a lot of in-house fighting, and we don't get too many of the kind of like butting heads and scraps on track where there's egos there. We're all fairly grounded, so we've been fortunate with that, but we've also worked hard at it, to get a good group of people that can represent the brand well. And we're with these guys 12, 14 hours a day. You've got to get on with the guys. You've got to have fun in the pit. So for me, that's a really instrumental part of, having the team working right. And we've weeded out the bad apples over time, and it only takes one bad apple to kind of rock the system and make it feel like it's unfriendly or kind of not got a nice vibe in the pit. So it'd be boring if we had all the same personalities. So I think, for me, it's good having a mix of guys, some more passionate vocals, some very quiet and demure and quiet in the pit. So yeah, it's a good mix.
Yeah, it's everything. Some people do just want you to tell them what to do to their car. Some people want reassurance what they're doing is right. And other people just need you to say, hey, it's going to be all right. You're good enough. Just get on with it.
We hear a lot across all of motorsport about team orders. Do you have experience of that happening? Do you think it exists really in RC, where teams will tell drivers to do certain things for the benefit of the team rather than the individual?
I think it exists. I think it exists in two sort of areas. First is probably tyre testing. That's not quite a team order on track like that, but it's like, I guess it's a form of strategy. If somebody who is a lower driver is going to be out on the track before somebody else, and they're willing to test some tyres, that is for the greater good of the team. And I think that's actually, at times, a healthy implementation of a team order. The time where I think it transcends into not good for the RC racing is if it's, if it is a on-track team order. That's, mind out the way, if you're on the headset and you're like, oh, mind out the way, that's a leader coming through, that is a positive team order. It's when you see people kind of, they're a bit slow to get out the way, and you see them on the mic and you're like, that's not a good thing. I think it exists. For sure it exists. It's not a good thing for RC racing. And it's also quite a difficult thing to police. I think it exists, it's not good, but team orders, holistically, can be a good thing for a team, just used in the right way.
Not that I've seen particularly. I'd say more if you've got a teammate sat near you and you know they need to do something in order to secure a result, and you're in the way, maybe you'll just let them have it a little easier than you would someone else. The same as if you've got someone behind you who you know you need to keep behind you, your teammates succeed, maybe you'll try a little bit harder than what you would otherwise. But we're all friends here. You know, it is an amateur sport. I know some of us are able to do it professionally, but I've got friends all over the pits. It's not just about Team XRAY, although I want Team XRAY to do well. Everyone needs to have fun, enjoy their racing. Yeah, so not really on the team order front. I want all the guys to do well for their own merit.
I mean, I've experienced team orders more so from the touring car side, where you can control the race a little bit better. But my experience with team orders is it never works out the way that you want it to. You know, X equals Y in order to get a W. It never pans out that way. I could probably name once or twice where team orders have been used for us to kind of win a Euros, which was in touring car. There was no dirty driving, it was just blocking tactics. I was on TQ, so I could dictate the speed and pace of the race to allow one of our other drivers to win, which I sacrificed me winning that race, but gave him the win overall. But it was, you know, we kind of had a loose plan going into the race, but it's kind of like, if it happens and this takes place, then we can of course do that. But off-road's a little bit more kind of frantic, really. It's, you know, it's less paced and less measured. It's more improvisation, and, you know, a lot of the times you don't anticipate making this pass. It just kind of happens. So, yeah, there's some of that. What was the question again?
I guess yes and no is the honest answer. I like to think I'm an honest person, and you're not going to have it where you'll go and roadblock a situation and force something. But like we had an EOS in Germany, it wasn't in Dawn, where Daniel needed to get a better score, and Michael, I think, had already TQ2. And Michael knew Daniel needed TQ, so I kind of left it with him to decide what he wants to do. Does he want to keep on the power? But he basically wasn't trying super hard to beat Daniel, but wasn't just going, I'm stopping to give you a gift. So yeah, you still have to earn it. But when they're together, I don't normally see them coming together. So they like to work together. So yeah, so the team orders thing, like, it's never been a thing for me. It intimidates me, the whole prospect of that. I'm not a confrontational person, but I do say to them, can you just figure it out between yourselves? Brock and Michael, again, working together to try and make sure Schumacher gets a result. When we've been in Florida and stuff like that. And they've actually, as much as they're fighting to be the best Schumacher guy, they also do actually work together quite well. They're very different personalities, but when it comes to it, they've been really good for me as an engineer to look after them. And then I loved it at the last Florida race, because to find out who the overall winner was, between those two, I just thought, go have fun. And the other nice thing was Brock had a new set of tyres glued up, ready to go. Michael didn't, and Michael said to him, do you want to just run the tyres we just used for the final? And Brock's like, yeah, okay. Stops dealing with his tyres, leaves the old ones on, and off they go. And that's dream work in those moments. And I'm just proud of them all, kind of thing, because you end up becoming friends with these guys, all of them. Even if they leave, you still like them. There's a lot of them probably think, oh, you're upset with them, but if they're not happy, then fine. But when I get it, when the team work together and they talk about setups, and like, for example, go back to Florida, I think I'm tangenting slightly, but when I went to Florida, Michael was really good with the four-wheel drive, but two-wheel drive, he wasn't happy. He couldn't get it round right. And it was vice versa with Brock. And in the end, they traded setups on the cars that weren't so good. And they both went better. They both excelled. And that was probably the best teamwork I've seen between them. And yeah, so it's been good. Like obviously I haven't mentioned Daniel too much, but like having Daniel and Michael working together, Daniel feeds back a lot of info to Michael of what he's found on the same setups. And yeah, no, I'm very lucky. If going back quite a few years, I only had Michael. And Michael didn't have someone to have feedback with. And then Jorn joined the team. We had a bit more of that, but Jorn drove very differently, so it didn't quite work in the same way. But now we're in a really good position. And at the EOS, I had 6 kind of high-level guys. I had Pecco, who was in the A. We had Noah Ben Mohammed. Then Elias Johansson. Then Daniel, Michael. And who am I missing? Oh, Ben Smith. And I felt very lucky. And they all had similar things going on. I think I over-answered that question.
Did you have a role to play in terms of talking to David on a team level about what happened?
Yeah, I just said take Michael out and you win. No, I'm joking. No, obviously myself and Michael were close, and I stayed completely out of it. Didn't have anything to do with it, as I'm UK team manager, so it wasn't anything to do with it, EOS. And it was just very unfortunate.
It's strange. This kind of comes full circle because we did a podcast with Michael. It's not been released yet, but we said that XRAY drivers get a bad rep for being a bit tough on the track, or maybe team tactics and stuff like that. But he said he doesn't think that the people in the blue t-shirts should be seen for anything other than individual racers. And he also talked about you and said that you're one of the most careful professional racers on the track.
Well, that's very nice of him, and I hope I've had a small impact on how he races. Myself and Neal, growing up together and racing very cleanly and competitively with each other, we had very little instances. And when we did, because we had so much respect for each other through all the years, when something happened, we knew it wasn't on purpose. So it's quickly forgotten about, and Michael has grown. Like when he was younger, he was a little bit forceful, but he definitely grew and experienced how other drivers can race around him and be very, not polite, you always still want to win, but like courteous of each other. And I think he's turned into an amazing racer now, and I think he is a courteous driver, and I think he should be proud of that. And hopefully, like what I did to him, that the new kids on the block will learn from him. So he just needs to keep his head and keep showing it how it should be done, and other people will hopefully learn from that too, the same way that hopefully I had that.
Have you been in a position where you've had to tell drivers off?
Yes, we've had instances with Marcus is a perfect example where he's been like here last year. I think he got into a little kerfuffle with one of the drivers. Had some instances we've seen at EOS years gone by where there's been instances that's taken place. He's had to learn the hard way. He's had to take his medicine from the race officials and the referees and stuff. So he's a young kid. He's passionate about his racing. So we've had to say, just calm it down, cool your heels, be patient. What goes around comes around. It will come back round to you. You've just got to be patient. I know you want to win, but do the right thing and win in the right way.
I had one time, I don't want to say names because he might watch this and go, hey man, I didn't appreciate that.
Oh, he's American.
I just... So basically, it was kind of funny in the end, but basically there was a final. Brock hit Martin Bayer, either on purpose or by accident, whatever. Anyway, Martin gets him back, and afterwards or whatever it was. And Brock came up to me and he was like, hey, did you see what Martin did to me? I'm like, yeah, and I saw what you did to him before that. And he was like, oh, yeah. And I said, you should probably apologize to him, otherwise that's going to happen again. He's like, that's true. Anyway, he went over there and they shook hands and they're fine, smiling at each other. So, and that's racing. They're all so passionate. They all want to prove themselves. And if you touch me, I want to touch you back kind of thing in an aggressive way, not a funny way. So that's like probably my only time, because things happen on the track, and obviously I've watched a recent beef history and we've all got opinions, and so I kind of try and stay out of it, like, what's your view in it? And they'll tell me, I'll trust them. I watch it back and okay, and you like to think in those situations they're not going to let you down, they'll be a good racer. But I also want them to stand up for themselves. In those moments where they do get bullied on the track and they get tapped a whole bunch of times and then flipped, they are going to get annoyed. And so I will respect their annoyed way. I will leave them to it. And it's hard for me because I've put a lot of energy and time into helping them, coaching them, design cars, get them to the track, get these cars back on mail for the company, and then for someone else to make it hard for us, that's tricky. But I respect all the races. I like Marcus. I see him, shake his hand. He's a really nice guy. Like Bruno, because obviously in the beef history, you talk about all these different people. They're all nice people, but once they're all on the track and they're racing, stuff happens. And for me, I'm a fan of the hobby, so it's it's fun. I'm involved with it, but then again, the confrontation bit, I'm like, oh. But I've not had anything where I've had to get, I don't know, all upset about.
Yeah, a number of times where, you know, just you know, I see it in both ways, where I'm like, well, that behavior, you know, the behavior that you just presented is not becoming of what we're wanting to present Trackside. You know, we're about uber professionalism, and that's something we always try to achieve. However, when I see a driver getting really upset about something, there is also a bit in my mind that they really care about it. And sometimes when you see a driver that just, you know, they bin it off, or they've had a really disastrous run and they're just really nonchalant about it, they're just like, oh, well, you know, on to the next one. It also goes both ways for me. Sometimes seeing that emotion tells you that they really care, and I can sort of look at their character with that in mind, and try to justify some silly decisions that of course happen at times. But it's nice to see that, you know, sometimes that they're really emotional about it. It means they care, and that's in balance and in moderation is a good thing.
How much of the time when you're at a race do you spend looking around the timesheets and the pits and thinking, I've got my eye on you for maybe a future season, like possible signings? Maybe you talked to them in previous years and didn't quite come off, and they're always like, maybe. How much time do you spend thinking about that? I'm going to keep an eye out for them and see if they could be a future member of a garment.
Yeah, we definitely we do that, and there are some like standouts, and you kind of, you know, normally the European Championship races are the times where those paths are made between you and these other brands. Like, you see them there, they're consistent, they turn up, their stuff always looks well presented, they have good results. Seeing that one time doesn't really constitute them being on my radar, because now at European Championship races, everybody normally presents themselves really well, their car looks good, they look good on track, and sometimes then they're very impressive on track. But it's when you see that multiple times, it starts to cement itself in my mind. You know the people that are kind of then a bit more, they're much more chummy at this race than they were the race before. And you think, maybe there could be something there. I guess I specifically don't kind of like try to seek it out that much, just because it doesn't sit right. You know, if you suddenly start taking a big interest in a driver and it's like really out of the blue, they can probably just read between the lines and realize you're wanting to try and sign them for your own benefit. So I prefer it to be a little bit more organic, and just like, if that comes together, that'll be cool. We'll see what we can do, but otherwise, but it's got to be organic.
You recently moved to XRAY this season. How's that?
Yeah, it's been great so far. The cars have been really good. It's all learning at the moment still. It's new compared to where I was last year. The team have been very good, supportive from the factory. It's XRAY, they do things well. And the engineering of the car is really good. The socials are really good. The team interaction, everything's done very, very high standard of professionalism. I'm hoping I can add to that with the team manager stuff and just trying to unify all the drivers as one big team.
I think of Associated, because they're so dominant in America, it's a very American feeling brand. I mean, it's one of the coolest brands. It's very American feeling. But one of their biggest stars is obviously the world champion, who's European. Do you have to kind of fight the European corner a bit at all with Team Associated, with the Americans, or do they sit comfortably that their biggest star is not an American guy? And also, how's that going to play out when we get to the Worlds in 2026 in the US?
Yeah, it's funny because obviously Brent's a US team manager, and whilst he wouldn't say he's like pro-America, he obviously is, just like I would be pro-European. So if we came head-to-head, then of course I want my guys to win and he'd probably want his guys to win. But ultimately, I think when you've got good guys that represent the brand well, it doesn't really matter. Somebody like David Hayes, is a perfect example of somebody that's been loyal, was passionate about coming to the brand in the first place when arguably we probably weren't that strong in 8 scale. So it's kind of it's a good question for you to maybe ask him is, what choices he made and what was going through his head to make that decision to come to Associate when probably at the time it wasn't the number one brand.
Yeah.
He was running Mugen at the time, which in my eyes would have been the brand of choice, you know, to be competitive in that class. So, you know, historical value in the brand and performance was great. So no, it's I think they're very aware that there's some strong European manufacturers now. You know, they'd be silly not to take note of that. You know, XRAY, Schumacher, the likes of them that have done very well. But, you know, the American powerhouse, it's probably not got the depth that it used to have. I don't know if I'm, you know, ill for saying that, but for me it was, you know, it was evident in the touring car days when we started having the Reinhardts come through, and it was just like, who's this little kid? And all of a sudden, off the back of that, you had a train of Europeans that were very, very strong, very competitive, and then became very, very dominant. And actually, the Americans were kind of the minority in them classes. So a little bit in off-road, where the Americans have been so dominant historically, we do now see a twist. You know, the Europeans are working hard. They're dedicated to the cause. There's manufacturers that are based over here that are very, very, very passionate about winning. So it's tough, you know. It's actually nice to see all the angles kind of coming in. I'd like to see the Japanese back in there again, mixing things up, which would be nice. You know, having multiple brands out there is good. It's healthy for the sport. It's good for the industry.
How do you combine all of this with also being a team manager? And is that an advantage or too much of a compromise, or do you just make it work?
So I think that, so reference it being for Team GB rather than just my own Nemo Racing team, I think that, I mean, it's my part. You know, it's my part of like helping them out, and you know, it's kind of like a bigger thing for me, where my whole thing is about getting British drivers away into a foreign country to race their RC cars and enjoy that whole experience. And for me as a team manager, that is the easiest way for me to do that. You know, as if I take off my EFRA hat, my Nemo Racing hat, I wear a few hats, as you know. My BRCA hat is the best thing I can do to basically communicate how great European Championship races are. Racing abroad like Montpellier just last weekend, these sort of races, racing abroad, are amazing. And the best way I can sort of get that to resonate with lots of GB drivers is in the stuff I do within the BRCA.
Okay, last question, and this is something I'm asking to all of the team managers or team bosses. As somebody who manages people on a team, as a kind of a strategist, is there one other team in particular that you think you want to beat?
Generally, when we go to America, Associated, they've always been that premier team that have been up there. And we were, let's say, a smaller company, and we've grown a bit, and we're able to fight a bit more. And so I'm really proud when we do that. In Europe, it's normally XRAY, but also Associated, very, very strong. In past years, there's been other brands up there. But, you know, Associated and XRAY are just fantastic companies to fight against. And I'm glad they're there, because it allows us to shine when we get either close to them or manage to beat them. And yeah, and I like all the people there. I've not met all of them, but the ones that I've met, they've always been very pleasant and very welcoming.
Amazing. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. We're asking all of the team bosses or team managers, when you look around the pits, when you look at all the events you go to, is there one other team that you kind of look at and go, it's nice to beat them, or we want to beat them?
Who we want to beat on the track, on and off the track, I guess. It's a pretty good question, one I'm having to think about more than normal. Normally I could reel off an answer pretty quickly. This one is a good question, Matt, because I'm just thinking of all of the politics about what my answer is and whether it's acceptable or not.
Well, for instance, Schumacher just said that when they're in America, they like to go up against Associated because they're kind of dominant there. When they're in Europe, it's generally XRAY that they're going against, but also Associated are fairly strong here as well. So, don't know.
So it's interesting here. It's interesting hearing their targets. I personally don't really look at it sort of brand specific, because it's such a general thing, you know, because nobody wins the brand race. There is no brand race as such. It's often just the drivers. You know, sure, you would like to win the race, but that's because it's your driver above another driver, not necessarily your brand beating another brand. So that's a big factor. And because we, as Nemo Racing, and Gamma is one of our brands, it's kind of like we're in a slightly different position where I'm just really happy to see a Nemo Racing driver do well, rather than sort of specifically beating someone or some other brand.
As a team manager, do you look around the pits and think, it's good when we beat that team in particular? Are there other teams you look at and go, as long as we beat them?
It changes almost every week, but you want to beat them all. So if there's beef with one and you guys like beef, then of course it makes it sweeter when you do beat them. So yeah, I think the last year or so, probably Schumacher being very, very dominant in the 10 scale category, particularly on carpet. So it's nice when we do beat them. It doesn't happen that often. So, you know, the EOS one was very sweet for us. It was a very measured kind of race for us. We had to be tactical with it. So we got the win off the back of that, which was great. Obviously, there was some ill feeling about that, but then the following week, Schumacher got the win over us with Marcus at the Mibbo. So here, Schumacher seemed very strong again. So it just ebbs and flows. You know, X-Ray's kind of stepping back into the off-road arena and being competitive as we've seen. So, so it's you know, but I think it'd be a boring old world if we were winning everything.
Hey there, we can't believe it, but you've made it to the secret after show.
Yes! First, we want to honor our heroes.
And for everyone else, we don't want to say goodbye. We want you to join us.
Yeah, if you want us to be able to keep making this content and coverage, there's a few ways that you can help.
Yeah, first and most importantly, you can hit subscribe.
Then, if you really want to support us, you can become an RCTV hero by joining the channel. Click join down below on YouTube, and the link for that is also in the description.
If you want to rep RCTV, then go to rcracingtv.com and buy some merch.
Finally, if you want to help us just keep the lights on, then you can buy us a coffee right here.
Right down there, or in person if we bump into you at the track.
Now, if you're still watching after all that, then it's time to pick your next clip. I would say the top one.
No, I think this one is way more their speed. I think this is the one that they'll like.
Okay. Well, either way, thanks and goodbye.